Morning, Happy New Year. So, we've had a lovely Christmas, and all around your house there will be cards everywhere that show this beautiful scene over here with baby Jesus in a stable with some shepherds and 3 kings. And it's all completely wrong. We've been here before. Well, a couple of years ago, we looked at the nativity story, and we looked at things that have been embroidered into that story. And we said they're wonderful, they're absolutely beautiful elements of our Christmas and the way that we imagine things to be. And it's really important to imagine lots of things into the Gospels because sometimes they're sparse on detail. But it's also good sometimes to go back to the text, to the Gospel itself, and see what really is there and what we've imagined into it. Because there might be something else we could imagine into it, which would be just as exciting and just as illuminating. So, Epiphany. The text doesn't have, just as David and Gwen told us, the text doesn't have any kings. There are no kings. I'm sorry to break it to you. There are no camels in any of the gospel texts about the Epiphany. So what we have is wise men, plural. There's more than one, but we have no idea how many. Interestingly, in the Eastern Church, they think there are 12 wise men coming. The earliest paintings that we have, paintings next to saints' tombs, one of them shows 2 wise men, and the other one shows 4 wise men, so no illumination going on there. And the early church fathers, including people like Origen, they settled on 3. So what we can be sure of is we have no idea. That's the first point that we know. Because the text uses the word magi, lots of people assume that this could mean that they're Iranian, they're from Persia. But there are lots of uses of the word magi at that time, and actually in the biblical texts earlier in the Old Testament, it could mean astrologers, but not necessarily from Persia. It could mean magicians, again from any foreign land. It could also mean con men. That's one they don't put on the Christmas cards, isn't it? A spivvy one there. We don't see that one. So the thing is, we just don't know. Again, we don't know. But there are some things that we do know, and this is what's really interesting. They were sent to Bethlehem because of a prophecy in Isaiah. And so Herod, who didn't even, Herod consulted and said, yeah, they must be in Bethlehem because that's what Isaiah says. How incredible is that? We just skim over that every year in the gospel. But this ancient text, hundreds of years old, told Herod to tell the Magi, the wise men, where to go. You'll find him in Bethlehem. So they went there and they found Jesus in a house. There wasn't any straw, there wasn't any hay. The gospel very clearly says they walked into a house. And that's because, very likely, certainly it wasn't on the night that he was born. So there was no wise men meeting any shepherds anywhere about. The shepherds went to a stable, but by this time, this is quite a lot later, up to 2 years later perhaps. They were in a house, but still in Bethlehem. All these interesting things that we never quite unpick. So what can we see in the gospel? What is there to see? Well, we can see Jesus. That's what we can see. And we can see Mary. Joseph isn't mentioned. Interesting, I'm sure he must have been there, but he's not mentioned. So no donkeys. Go on, donkey, off you go. No stable, no hay. But we can see Jesus and we can see Mary. And we can see 3 people who have travelled for months. And another thing that we forget is that these people weren't even Jewish. They weren't even Jewish, and yet they had seen something which had made them travel for months to this place based on a prophecy from such a long time ago. It's extraordinary, these beautiful things that we start to unpick from the story. So we've got 3 people coming to visit. We don't know how many. We've got people coming to visit, wise men coming to visit a mother and a baby in a house. We've got gold, which obviously is for a king. We've got frankincense, which denotes that he's a priest. And we've got myrrh for a burial. And there's this moving celestial body, this star that is moving. And there's really nothing else. The rest of it we've embroidered. It's fine to have done that. We need to imagine things in. We need to wonder what it was like. But it's good to know what's there. So this child has drawn visitors for this incredible amount of time, this immense journey that they've taken. And we love the beauty of the idea of these foreign kings. We love the idea of they're so jolly and colourful, it's easy. We tend to focus on that aspect. But I think when we strip the story back, we see something really beautiful. I think it just reminds us, and certainly when I was looking at this, it really reminded me of how these people travelled so far and knelt down and bowed down to this tiny baby who couldn't even speak and ask, but the heavenly bodies were moving to bring these people to him. So this pared back story reminds me of kneeling in reverence, of that absolute pure worship that sometimes Christmas misses. And that's a real joy of Epiphany, to remember that. So our wildly flamboyant stories that we all love. One of my favourites is Love Actually, where the little kid comes home and goes, I'm the first lobster in the nativity, with all of the beautiful embroidery that we put on. Sometimes it's easy to glaze over what's important, but stripping it back, we can remember that this story is more astonishing than we can sometimes even imagine. So I hope like me, this might help you to remember that thought of kneeling in reverence to the tiny baby of Bethlehem who drew scholars from distant lands. Amen.